In a distant part of the galaxy, there was a race of beings known as the Zorathi. They had once been a mighty and advanced civilization. Their cities stretched high into the sky, and their technology was unrivaled. The Zorathi had explored every corner of their planet and beyond, visiting distant moons and stars. They had everything: power, knowledge, and prosperity. But now, they had lost it all. The Zorathi were dying. No one knew exactly what had caused the destruction of their people. Some believed it was a deadly disease, while others whispered about a curse. Whatever the reason, the once great race was slowly fading into oblivion. Their population dwindled day by day. The once bustling cities were now empty and silent. Buildings, once grand and majestic, stood as empty shells of what they used to be. Their advanced machines, which had once served them so well, were now broken and useless. The Zorathi tried everything they could to survive. They searched for cures, built machines to reverse their decline, and reached out to other species for help. But no one came. The galaxy watched, but no one offered assistance. The galaxy had grown cold, indifferent to the suffering of the Zorathi. After all, they were just another species, and there were countless others who needed help. Why should anyone care about the fall of the Zorathi? As the years passed, the Zorathi's situation became more desperate. The remaining population lived in fear, knowing that each day could be their last. The children who had once played in the streets were now sickly, weak, and few in number. The elders, who had once been the wise leaders of their society, now shuffled around, lost in their memories of better days. It was a sad and painful sight. Yet despite everything, the Zorathi did not give up. They continued to fight, clinging to the hope that somehow, something would change. They launched desperate missions to space, searching for answers in the stars. They reached out to other planets, hoping to find someone, anyone, who could save them. But the galaxy remained silent. On their dying world, a small group of Zorathi leaders gathered in a dark room. The air was thick with the weight of their despair. They looked at each other, their faces worn and tired. They had tried everything. Nothing had worked. And now their people were on the brink of extinction. "We are running out of time," one of the leaders said, his voice heavy with sorrow. The others nodded. "We've done all we can. There is nothing left for us but to watch our people fade away," another said. The room fell silent. There were no more solutions. No more hopes. The Zorathi knew their time was nearly up. But then one of the leaders, a woman named Zara, stood up. She was young, not yet old enough to fully understand the weight of their plight, but she had a fire in her that the others lacked. "Maybe there is one thing left to try," she said, her voice filled with a strange new hope. The others looked at her, puzzled. "What do you mean?" one asked. Zara walked to a nearby console and began typing rapidly. "I've been studying the records of the other species in the galaxy," she said. "I've seen the humans. They are different from the others. They act when others hesitate. They don't stand by while others suffer. I believe they might help us." The other leaders exchanged doubtful looks. "The humans? They are far away. Why would they care about us?" Zara didn't answer immediately. She continued to type, pulling up images and reports of humanity. She showed them pictures of Earth, of the humans fighting for survival, of their battles, their will, and their courage. "I've read their history," Zara continued. "They may not be as advanced as us in terms of technology, but they have something we've lost. They have determination, compassion, and a drive to help others. If anyone can save us, it's them." For a long time there was silence in the room. The idea of asking for help seemed impossible. But then, slowly, the others began to nod. Maybe it was their last hope. Maybe they had nothing left to lose. The galaxy, once so indifferent, might have finally offered them a chance they had almost given up on. "We will send a message," Zara said, her voice now filled with conviction. "We will reach out to them. We will ask for their help." And so, with no other options remaining, the Zorathi sent their message. Their plea for help echoed across the stars, hoping against hope that someone, anyone, would hear it. The Zorathi had sent their message to the stars, and now they waited. Time seemed to drag on, stretching the silence between them and the distant hope they had placed in humanity. The transmission they sent had not been an easy decision. It was the last move they could make. Their people were fading away, and they were on the verge of being lost to the galaxy forever. Yet, in the heart of the Zorathi Council, a single question hung in the air. Would anyone respond? Jara, the young leader who had suggested contacting the humans, couldn't stop herself from feeling a strange mix of excitement and fear. She knew it was a long shot. The humans living on a distant planet called Earth had their own struggles. They were a young species, still finding their place in the grand universe. But what she had seen in their records gave her a flicker of hope. Humanity was unlike any other species the Zorathi had encountered. They were resourceful, courageous, and perhaps most importantly, compassionate. While other species might turn away, the humans had a tendency to act when others would stand aside. Days passed, and there was no response. The Zorathi continued their lives in their dimming world, clinging to the belief that humanity might come to their aid. But as each hour stretched into the next, they began to doubt. Still, Zara did not give up. She spent her time in the communication room monitoring the frequencies, waiting for the faintest sign that the humans had heard their call. Her eyes were tired from the countless hours she spent looking at the endless stretches of empty space, but she refused to look away. Then, one fateful evening, it happened. A small, flickering light appeared on the console. Zara's heart skipped a beat. She quickly moved to the console, her hands shaking with anticipation. She keyed in the commands, bringing up the signal. The voice that came through was clear, crisp, and unmistakably human. Zorathi, we have received your message. We are listening. Zara could hardly believe it. The humans had heard them. They were not abandoned. She quickly activated the communication system, sending a response with the Zorathi's plea for help. We are dying, she said. Our race is on the brink of extinction. We need assistance. Can you help us? There was a long pause before the human voice returned. We understand. We have faced struggles of our own, and we know what it means to fight for survival. We will send a team to assist you. The words echoed in Zara's mind. The humans were coming. It was their last hope. She didn't know what to expect. How could she? The humans were unknown to her people in many ways, but this response was more than they had hoped for. They had not been abandoned by the universe, after all. Word spread quickly throughout the Zorathi cities. The small flicker of hope that had been reignited began to grow. People who had long since given up, who had been waiting for their final moments, found themselves questioning the inevitable. The leaders of the Zorathi, who had spent years watching their people suffer, now found themselves cautiously optimistic. Humanity was coming to help. They might just save them. Zara worked tirelessly to prepare for their arrival. She coordinated with the best engineers, scientists, and doctors of the Zorathi to ensure everything was ready. The humans would need all the information they could get to understand the scope of the problem they faced. The Zorathi didn't know what technology the humans would bring with them, but they had to be prepared for any outcome. They could not afford to make mistakes now. As the days passed, the anticipation grew. The Zorathi population, though weary and broken, began to hope for the first time in years. The news of humanity's response sparked a new energy in their people. Could it be possible? Could they really be saved? Then, after what seemed like an eternity, the humans arrived. Their ships entered the Zorathi atmosphere quietly, almost peacefully. No grand explosions or dramatic displays. It was a simple, deliberate arrival. The ships, though not the most advanced the Zorathi had seen, were sturdy and efficient, designed to carry out the mission rather than impress with outward beauty. Jara stood with the council as the ships descended toward their planet. Her heart raced as she watched the humans make their first steps onto the Zorathi world. She had seen videos of humans before, but seeing them in person was different. Their faces were full of determination, but there was something else there too. Beneath the courage, there was a quiet understanding of the weight they carried with them. They were not coming just to solve a problem. They were coming to save a people from the brink of total destruction. As the human leader stepped forward, Zara couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. He was tall, with a face that looked weathered but kind. He extended a hand in greeting, and Zara, with a mix of nervousness and excitement, shook it. "We will do everything we can," the human leader said. "You are not alone anymore." With that simple declaration, the Zarathi knew something had shifted. The humans had come, and they had brought with them not just their technology, but something far more powerful: hope. The Zarathi had never known what to expect from humanity. The first steps they took onto the surface of their dying world were quiet, filled with the sounds of distant winds and the fading echoes of their civilization. As the humans began to set up their camps and establish their presence, the Zarathi watched from a distance. There was something strange about them, something different from the other species they had encountered over the centuries. The humans were not the largest or most powerful, but there was a strength in them that was impossible to ignore. Jara, the young leader who had been the first to suggest reaching out to Earth, stood at the front, observing the humans. She had heard stories about them. In the records she had found, humans had a history of stepping into situations where others feared to act. They were not always the most technologically advanced, but they possessed a drive that others lacked. It was this drive that made Zara hopeful. And yet, even as she watched them, she couldn't help but wonder, could they truly help? The human leader, a man named Captain Nathan, had already gathered a team of experts from various fields: doctors, engineers, biologists, and even historians. They came with no promises of grand victories or quick solutions. Instead, they offered something more profound: a willingness to listen and a determination to understand. They didn't assume they knew what was best for the Zarathi. They needed to learn. That was one thing Zara noticed about them immediately. They didn't carry themselves with arrogance or pride. Instead, they approached everything with curiosity, as if they truly wanted to understand the Zarathi's world and their struggles. Over the next few weeks, the humans worked tirelessly, analyzing the air, the water, the soil. They took samples from every corner of the planet, searching for anything that might explain the mysterious illness that had decimated the Zarathi. At first, many of the Zarathi leaders were unsure. Would humanity's methods be enough? The problem had gone on for so long. Could the humans truly make a difference? But slowly their doubts began to fade. Captain Nathan's team came up with one breakthrough after another. They discovered that the Zarathi's declining health was linked to a complex interaction between their planet's atmosphere and a rare mineral deep within the planet's core. This mineral, once used to power their cities, had begun to leak into the environment in dangerous quantities. The Zarathi had no idea it was happening, and by the time they realized, it was too late to reverse the damage. Humanity, however, was not deterred. They began to devise a plan to remove the mineral from the planet's core without causing further harm to the already fragile ecosystem. The humans didn't see the Zarathi as a problem to be solved. They saw them as equals, as people who deserved a chance to survive. But not everyone in the galaxy was happy about humanity's involvement. The Zorathi's neighbors, the Shivari, a proud and ancient race, were watching closely. They had their own interests in the region and didn't want to see the Zorathi rise again. The Shivari had long seen the Zorathi as a weak and fading species, and their downfall had been inevitable. They had made no secret of their indifference to the Zorathi's suffering, and now they saw the humans as a threat. If humanity succeeded in saving the Zarathi, it would change the balance of power in the galaxy. The Shivari would no longer be able to sit back and watch. Despite the tension, humanity continued their work. The human engineers and scientists, with the help of the Zarathi, built enormous machines that could safely extract the dangerous mineral from the planet's core. They worked day and night, carefully planning every step, knowing that one wrong move could spell disaster. As the humans and Zarathi worked side by side, a strange bond began to form. The Zarathi, who had once viewed humanity as a distant, almost mythical species, began to see them for what they truly were: resilient, compassionate, and determined. Zara watched as her people began to recover. The signs were subtle at first: an increase in the number of healthy children, the plants starting to grow again in areas that had once been barren, and the sick starting to regain their strength. It was a slow process, but it was enough to spark a flicker of hope. The Zorathi weren't going to fade away after all. Maybe, just maybe, they could rebuild. But as the weeks passed, the tension with the Shivari grew. Zara knew that they couldn't keep this secret forever. The Shivari would eventually make their move. But for now, she focused on the work at hand. There was too much to do, and the people of the Zorathi were depending on them. One day, while Zara and Captain Nathan were reviewing the progress of the operation, a transmission came through. It was a message from the Shivari. The message was clear, and it was a warning. If humanity continued to interfere, there would be consequences. Zara looked at Nathan, her face filled with concern. "They're not going to let this go, are they?" Nathan's expression was calm, but there was an edge to his voice. "It doesn't matter. We're not here to play games. We're here to help." For the first time since humanity's arrival, Zara felt a surge of pride. The humans had come for no other reason than to help. They were doing what others wouldn't. And even though the galaxy watched with a mixture of curiosity and fear, the Zorathi knew one thing for certain: humanity wasn't going anywhere. The work continued. The danger of the Shivari's threats loomed over them, but Zara couldn't afford to let fear control her. The Zorathi were alive, and with humanity's help, they would survive. They would fight for their future, just as humanity had fought for theirs. In the face of uncertainty, one thing was clear: humanity had come to the Zorathi's aid not because it was easy, but because it was the right thing to do. And that, in the end, was what made them different. The Zorathi and the humans had been working together for months now, and the progress was undeniable. There was still a long road ahead, but the Zorathi were no longer a fading species. Life was slowly returning to their planet, and with each day their hope grew stronger. Yet despite the triumphs, an underlying tension remained. The Shivari's warning still echoed in Zara's mind. While the Zorathi and humans had focused on survival and rebuilding, the Shivari watched from the shadows, their eyes never straying too far from the actions taking place on Zorath. Captain Nathan had grown accustomed to the challenges they faced on the planet, but he never let his focus waver. As the human team continued working on the core extraction project, his attention often turned to the larger picture. The Zorathi had begun to rebuild their cities, repairing the damage caused by the mineral leak. Their technology was advancing again, albeit more slowly than before, but their recovery was a testament to the resilience of their species. Nathan knew this was a crucial moment. The Zorathi were standing on the edge of a new era, and humanity was their lifeline. Zara, too, was feeling the weight of responsibility. Her people had been through so much, and now they had to make decisions that could determine their future. She often stood on the balcony of the council building, looking out over the vast green plains that stretched across the planet. The once dead lands were now teeming with life again. The sickly, dying plants had been replaced by vibrant, growing forests. The air was clearer, and the water purer. She could see the changes in the faces of the Zorathi as well. The fear had slowly faded, replaced by a sense of possibility. Her people were learning to believe in a future again. But even as the recovery continued, Zara's mind kept returning to the Shivari. Their threats were not to be taken lightly. The Zorathi and humans had worked hard to get this far, but if the Shivari decided to take action, everything could be undone in an instant. It was a troubling thought that kept Zara awake at night. She wasn't sure what the Shivari would do, but she was certain that they would not stand by and watch the Zorathi rise again. One evening, as Zara was preparing for another council meeting, a transmission came through. It was an urgent message, marked with the unmistakable seal of the Shivari. The room fell silent as the Zorathi leaders gathered around the communication console. Zara pressed a button, and the image of a Shivari diplomat appeared on the screen. His face was stern, his expression unreadable. "We've been watching," the Shivari diplomat began, his voice cold and emotionless. "Your attempts to save yourselves are futile. You will never be allowed to rise again. We warned you of the consequences." Zara felt a chill run down her spine. This was not a negotiation. The Shivari were not here to talk. They were here to assert their dominance, and from the way the diplomat spoke, it was clear they meant to follow through with their threat. Zara straightened, her voice steady as she addressed the diplomat. "We are not asking for permission. Our people are alive, and we will not allow anyone to take that from us." The diplomat's expression remained unchanged. "You are making a grave mistake. The balance of the galaxy is at stake. Do not think you can stand against the Shivari." Before Zara could respond, the transmission was abruptly cut off. The room was filled with a tense silence. The leaders exchanged nervous glances. The Shivari were powerful, and they had always been ruthless in their pursuit of control. Could they really stand up to them? Zara turned to Captain Nathan, who had been standing at the back of the room, watching the transmission with a grim expression. He walked forward, his eyes meeting hers. "We've faced threats before," he said quietly. "But this is different. The Shivari won't back down easily." Zara nodded, understanding the weight of his words. "We need to be ready. We can't let fear stop us from moving forward." "Captain," Nathan didn't respond immediately. Instead, he took a moment to gather his thoughts. "We'll continue our work. The people of Zorath deserve a future, and we'll help them fight for it. But we'll also need to prepare for whatever the Shivari have planned." And so the next few days were filled with preparations. The humans and Zorathi worked side by side, not only advancing their recovery efforts, but also preparing for the possibility of conflict. They couldn't afford to wait until the Shivari made their move. They had to be proactive. Plans were made to fortify key cities, and the Zorathis shared their knowledge of their planet's geography with the human engineers. Together they devised defensive measures that would protect the most vulnerable areas from any attack. Zara found herself becoming more and more determined. She knew that the Zorathi's survival was no longer just about rebuilding. It was about resisting forces that had long seen their downfall as inevitable. But the humans had shown her that there was power in unity, and with their help, the Zorathi might stand a chance. They were not alone anymore. As the days turned into weeks, a new sense of strength filled the air. There were still challenges ahead, but the Zorathi were ready. They had the humans by their side, and together, they were more than just a dying race. They were a force to be reckoned with. The Shivari might have underestimated the Zorathi, but they had made a grave mistake. The real fight had just begun. DQ. Tension in the air was thick. Days turned into weeks as the Zorathi and humanity worked tirelessly to prepare for the worst. While the recovery continued, Zara couldn't shake the feeling of impending conflict. The Shivari were not a race that would simply let go of their ambitions, especially not when they had been given a warning. Yet amid all the uncertainty, the Zorathi's strength had been slowly restored, not just in their world but in their hearts. There was a new sense of pride among the people, something they hadn't felt in years. It was as if they had been given a second chance and they were determined not to waste it. Zara stood with Captain Nathan overlooking one of the new cities that had begun to rise from the ashes of the old. The once empty streets were now filled with workers and families bustling with the energy of life. It was a city that had been rebuilt with hope, a city that embodied everything the Zorathi had fought for. The humans had helped them turn their dreams into reality, and now the Zorathi had become more than just survivors. They were rebuilding their civilization brick by brick, with the knowledge and determination to prevent their past mistakes from repeating. But even as life began to return to the planet, there was still the looming threat of the Shivari. The Zorathi had fortified their cities, and the humans had helped them develop a communication system to stay connected. Captain Nathan's team had also worked on creating a form of emergency evacuation should the worst come to pass. Yet there was a quiet undercurrent of fear that still ran through Zara's veins. She knew the Shivari would not back down. Their pride and history made them formidable opponents, and their anger at the Zorathi's revival could turn into something far more dangerous. One evening, as Zara sat in the council hall, surrounded by the leaders of her people, a transmission came through. The council room fell silent as the familiar cold image of the Shivari diplomat appeared once again. His expression was as unreadable as ever, but this time, there was an undeniable sense of urgency in his voice. "Zorathi," the diplomat began, his tone sharp. "You have been warned. Your actions are not without consequences. The Shivari will not stand by while you and your human allies defy us." Zara listened carefully, her heart racing. The words were not new, but the cold certainty in the diplomat's voice was different this time. It wasn't just a threat anymore. It was a declaration. The Shivari were ready to act. The Zorathi leaders exchanged nervous glances. This was the moment they had feared, and now it was upon them. But Zara stood tall, unwilling to show any sign of fear. She had seen what humanity was capable of. She knew they wouldn't back down, and she would not allow her people to be dragged back into the darkness they had fought so hard to escape. "We will not be intimidated," Zara said firmly, her voice steady and confident. "We have fought for this future, and we will not let anyone take it from us." The Shivari diplomat's lips curled into a thin, cold smile. "You will learn the price of your defiance. Be prepared for what comes next." With that, the transmission ended, leaving an uneasy silence in its wake. The Zorathi council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats, but Zara's mind was already working. She knew that the time for talk was over. The Shivari would come, and when they did, they would come with everything they had. Captain Nathan was waiting for her outside the council hall. His face was set in a hard expression, but there was a glimmer of determination in his eyes. "We've known this was coming," he said, his voice calm but serious. "But now it's time to prepare for the fight. We'll make sure your people are ready." Zara nodded, her mind racing with thoughts of what they could do next. They couldn't just wait for the Shivari to arrive. They had to take the initiative. But what could they do to stand a chance against such a powerful and ancient race? Nathan seemed to read her thoughts. "It's not about strength alone. The Shivari have underestimated what you've built here, and they've underestimated the humans. We're more than just a helping hand, we're a team, and teams don't lose." Zara's heart swelled with pride at his words. She had seen what humanity could accomplish when they worked together. They had brought life back to her world, and now they would help defend it. She had faith in the humans, but she also had faith in her own people. The Zorathi were not the same fragile species they had been when the humans arrived. They had grown stronger, more united, and together, they would face whatever the Shivari had planned. In the following days, Zara and Captain Nathan held meetings with the Zorathi leaders, strategizing their next moves. They set up defense systems in key areas, working closely with the human engineers to make sure that their technology was ready for any threat. The humans brought with them advanced technologies, tools and methods that the Zorathi had never seen before. Together they crafted systems that could protect the most vulnerable parts of the planet. But beyond technology, it was the spirit of unity that became their greatest weapon. The Zorathi had learned the value of collaboration, of working together toward a common goal. They were no longer divided or defeated. They were a species reborn, and they would stand their ground. The Shavari's shadow loomed ever closer, but the Zorathi had something the Shivari had never expected: hope. And with humanity at their side, they were ready to face whatever came next. The day arrived sooner than expected. A tense quiet had settled over Zorath, as though the planet itself was holding its breath, waiting for the inevitable. The Zorathi, alongside their human allies, stood ready, not knowing exactly what would come, but knowing they had to be prepared. It had taken years to build this fragile peace, this hope, and neither the Zorathi nor the humans were willing to let it slip away without a fight. They had seen the changes, the miracles of recovery, and they would not let anyone take that away from them. Zara stood in front of the newly restored council hall, gazing out at the horizon. The distant mountains, once shadowed by the sickness that had nearly destroyed her people, now looked majestic in the sunlight. The Zarathi cities, though rebuilt with care, had become symbols of survival, each one standing proudly as a testament to what they had achieved. Humanity had helped them stand again, but it was their own resilience that had made it possible. She couldn't help but feel a surge of pride for her people. Yet in the distance, something dark and foreboding loomed. The Shivari were approaching. The knowledge weighed heavily on her shoulders. She turned to Captain Nathan, who had joined her at the front, his face as focused as ever. It wasn't the first time they had faced an uncertain future, but this felt different. They weren't just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting for their place in the galaxy. The Shivari had long seen the Zarathi as weak and unworthy, but what the Shivari didn't understand was that the Zarathi were not alone anymore. Humanity stood beside them, and together, they would make a stand. "I never thought it would come to this," Zara said softly, looking out over the fields that had once been barren. "We fought so hard to get here. How can they not see how much we've changed?" Nathan nodded, his voice calm but resolute. "The Shivari don't care about change, Zara. They care about power. But we've shown them something they didn't. I expect determination. Your people have come so far, and we're here to make sure you don't have to fight this battle alone." Zara looked at him, and for the first time in a long while she felt a sense of calm. The humans had been their constant support, their partners in this journey. They hadn't just come to save a dying race, they had come to fight for what was right. That, more than anything, had made all the difference. As the sun began to set, casting an orange glow over the planet, the Zorathi and human forces moved into position. The cities were protected by newly constructed barriers, and the strategic positions had been reinforced with energy shields and defensive systems developed by the humans. The Zorathi had never seen anything like it. The walls of their cities now stood stronger than ever, a reflection of the strength they had found in themselves and their alliance with humanity. The Shivari's fleet, a massive formation of sleek ships, appeared on the horizon. It was an intimidating sight. There was no doubt about that. The Shivari were known for their impressive fleet, their advanced technology, and their unwavering confidence. But the sight didn't cause panic among the Zorathi, nor did it deter the humans. Instead, there was a quiet determination in the air. They had faced challenges before, and they were ready to face this one. Shara and Nathan stood at the command center, watching the approaching fleet. The Zorathi command officers were ready at their posts, and the human engineers and military strategists had ensured that every possible defense had been accounted for. But as Zara looked at the approaching ships, a thought crossed her mind. The Shivari may have underestimated the Zorathi, but they had made an even greater mistake in underestimating humanity. They were not the only ones with advanced technology. The humans had shown them how to adapt and create, how to rise above limitations, and now humanity's knowledge was a vital part of their strength. As the fleet drew closer, the tension was palpable. The Zorathi stood firm, their pride in their rebuilt world clear in their eyes. They had endured loss, they had faced extinction, and they had risen, and now they were prepared to defend their future. A transmission came through, and the Shivari diplomat's cold face appeared once again on the screen. His expression was unreadable, but there was a certain arrogance in his posture, as if the Zorathi's survival was nothing more than an annoyance to him. "You are wasting your time," the diplomat said, his voice cutting through the tension. "The galaxy does not bend to your whims. You are nothing but a dying species clinging to the edge of existence. Your alliance with the humans will not save you." Zara's eyes hardened. "We are not clinging to anything. We are standing tall, and we are not going anywhere. You will not take this from us." The diplomat's lips curled into a slight smile, though it didn't reach his eyes. "We shall see." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving a lingering silence in its wake. Zara's hands clenched into fists at her sides. This was it. The Shivari had made their intentions clear. They weren't just going to stand by and watch. But Zara could feel it in her bones. Her people were ready. They had found strength in unity, and they had found strength in the humans who stood by their side. "I'm not afraid anymore," Zara said, her voice steady with conviction. "We fought too hard to get here. We'll show them what the Zorathi are capable of." Nathan smiled, his face filled with quiet pride. "You're not alone, Zara. The humans stand with you, and together, we'll fight for your future. The galaxy won't forget what happens next." And so, as the Shivari's fleet began to move into position, the Zorathi and humanity stood together, united, determined, and ready. The future of Zorath and the future of their alliance was about to be decided, and no matter what happened, they would face it together.